Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to meeting number 5 of the Count Township Zoning Ordinance Update. If anyone has problems hearing me on Zoom, raise your hand or put a note in the chat, and between Don and I hopefully will see it and be able to correct the issue. So tonight's agenda, we have 6 items. First, reviewing the meeting minutes from the last meeting, reviewing revisions to the work map of the proposed zoning districts, discussing the possible revision to the cluster option, and discussing possible standards for mixed-use growth district up at the Route 30 and Fisherville and Reeseville roads. Then a public comment period and confirmation of the next meeting date, which is, oh, I did not put the date in there. I apologize for that. July 18th. July 18th.
18.
I apologize.
I thought you left that open on purpose.
No, although August might be a question. Talk about that later or another. Okay, so meeting minutes. Don sent meeting minutes out. I apologize. I have not had a chance to review them yet. I was on mobile today and wasn't able to access my email from my phone to check them. So I'll have whatever comments I have on them.
I hit one, it's not a comment on, it's not, the minutes are perfect. It's, Jane, I wanted to get your input on this. The I-1 section right adjacent to Carver Court. We were talking about potentially making that residential.
You mean over where the factory is?
Where Brandywine Fabricators, so that in the future, it doesn't keep pushing this industry to Carver Court area. So
yeah, well, they're ready to construct a big development. Habitat, so it's directly across them. That's the only open tract of ground there. Correct?
Yes.
I think it would do well.
You want to leave it as industrial where Brandywine is, or think we should? I would, and we went all around on this the last time. I personally would say residential.
Well, can we do mixed growth? Like you were looking at doing like mixed growth, a district?
Oh, the mixed.
Because you already have, because you already have industrial, but then all that open land could potentially become residential.
Yeah, because if Brandywine ever goes out of business,
or if he even wants to just sell that big open field there, which the company sold there, so we don't know about.
So let me jump in here because that brings us into the first topic for tonight, and that is looking at the possible revisions to the zoning districts. And so that's number 2 on the agenda. So I can pull up the zoning map here if you want to look at that more closely. So what Mark and Jane were discussing is the possible change. Bear with me. Get zoomed in here to the area of the township. This is on North Cowan Road, where these light blue, no, isn't it here?
No.
We're on the other side of the high school.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Right.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
Yep, in the purple.
Sorry. And let me turn off this aerial image. Easier to see. Okay, so these properties here, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so at the last meeting last month, we had talked about possibly changing these from industrial, their existing I-1, and possibly changing them to Lincoln Highway District zoning. And then at the last meeting, we decided to leave them as I-1. I'm not sure of the acreage. Adam, you on Chesco Views? Or Chesco Views guy?
One parcel to part at the top. All the one like.
Okay.
Get that mic in there.
So 1.6 acres, one to the west is 2.5. The south, that smaller one is just under 4, 3 acres, sorry. And then the larger one with fabricators is 14 and a half acres.
Okay.
But they own all of that land, correct? That
No,
family,
Well, they own the 14 acres.
but they don't own the other parcels?
Those other parcels are teams.
Oh, okay. Where they have the,
The propane,
okay.
or
So you can see the current development on them according to the aerial photos. So this is the fabricators, correct?
Yes.
And then there are, it looks like some existing uses on these other properties. Is that the restaurant?
That's King's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the options that we had discussed last month were to leave them as I-1 or change them to Lincoln Highway West. According to my notes, we had decided to leave them as I-1, partly because of the issue of trying to maintain what industrial property you have now so that you don't get into an issue of, so to speak, a fair share of not having your fair share of industrial zone properties. So that could be one concern. We did pick up some industrial zoning over here at Northtown Road. So
Just to clarify, what can be put in the industrial section? What type of,
let me pull
buildings.
up.
and the only reason why I'm asking is that if it allows smoke shops and we're so close to the high school and another, that,
oh,
mhm. Yeah,
So the I-1 district, it's currently zoned I-1. Uses, wait, is this correct? Yeah, industrial 1, okay. Agriculture, public utilities, municipal uses, forestry, and conservation use are uses by right. Conditional use, manufacturing, including medical marijuana, mini warehouse, mini warehouse or self-storage units, warehousing, wholesale and distribution, fabrication and finishing, bus or railway station, business and professional offices, office and business park, medical research park, industrial park.
the marijuana is not sale. That's
Right,
it's not
growing, not
That's
yeah.
that's growth.
It's growth and processing, not sales.
Off business parks, office parks, medical research parks, industrial parks, commercial water resource, vet hospital, educational use, wireless communication facilities, government, flex space, trade school,
Special exception.
special exception are mobile home parks, adult business.
solid waste disposal.
So,
This is where I'm hoping to right or wrong. You know, this is what's happened, you know, historically in this nation. Majority Black neighborhoods are jammed industrial with all this crap around. And, you know, need to right that wrong.
I don't know that with a 14-acre, sorry, Jane, with a 14-acre property being the largest property here,
Yeah.
I don't know that you would get something like a solid waste facility or something like that. Now, you could still get some other type of industrial use, but keep in mind the size of the properties we're talking about here too. But,
So,
it depends on how your ordinance defines it, actually. But let me see. Solid waste disposal and reduction facilities, that's usually, like a recycling type of facility. I could try to jump on your,
Let's see.
20 acres
Oh,
minimum.
perfect.
that
Yeah.
won't work there.
Unless they buy the other
But then
property.
They connected.
I was gonna say, but connected to
Would
that.
still be pretty tight.
Yeah, they're across the street, across from 11th, is it?
But connected to that 14-acre tract is a medium to high density residential.
The R4, that light green.
Yes.
Yeah, the light green is R4. So that's probably your highest density residential district.
And that's where we're looking at putting in developmental property now. Habitat. So,
But that's only homes. Slope.
yeah, well.
7? Yeah.
Yeah, as of Tuesday night, it's 2 buildings,
Okay.
townhomes.
Townhomes.
But that's just the bottom part.
But then they're going behind there.
And the contiguous land above, which is limited because of steep slopes as well, but they'll definitely want to develop
They're
that
going
into
in.
housing at some point. That's why they bought it. And then
This
the
one here,
parcel
Ray,
across
this
the
is
street
R5.
is, the proposed street is going to be a unit, or 2 units.
Right, the property, the solar farm, where our cursor is now, when that was a home development, wasn't it like only like 11 homes or something?
Yeah, because of the steep slopes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not talking
Difficult
about,
parcel.
yeah, a massive parcel that people are going to put a lot on.
So there'll be 4 houses on that parcel there that they're,
The lower one right now, they're still real early, but they presented 2 apartment buildings with just 4 units each and
Well, that's
potentially
8
a third
units.
one.
yeah, it could be 12 units potentially.
Back the 14-acre lot. If we went residential with that, maybe a developer can do a little bit more with the roads. Because I think that's the other concern. You're fed back in there with no exit.
Brandywine Fabricators owns the road and
Yeah.
has closed it off. So
Exactly,
if you
yeah.
got a residential development in there, they would obviously want to open that, I would think.
And it opens to the high school.
To the high school, yeah.
Doing high school hours.
Yeah. Remember Jane
Well, they
in the
open it,
neighborhood
they,
talking about
yeah,
that?
You walk right into that.
yep,
Well, you have 2 issues. The school's the one that wanted the gate
on their side,
on their side.
which,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a security issue.
So, yeah, so you have some options here. You can leave it I1, you could, rezone it R4 if you want that, higher density development here, and that would be neighboring an existing R4 property.
Mhm.
So that would turn that industrial land into residential land. Or you have the option of the other discussion point that we had is turning it into the Lincoln Highway. I think there was
It's not on
was
Lincoln.
not-
access. Yeah, it's not actually on Lincoln
Right.
Highway, right, right. So Lincoln Highway is actually coming down here where my cursor is, where the business 30 sign is. Right, so, okay, so that's out. Sorry about that. So it's
R4.
Can you
I
do something smaller? What's R3 would be less intrusive, wouldn't it?
yes.
Talk about segue to that conversation.
Your neighborhood R3 or?
Right.
What if there's in between?
Actually, Mark Gallant brings up a good point too, is that this is bordering
Oh,
Coatesville
right.
too. So, I mean, a higher density
Or what if we zoned it
actually makes sense.
what the high school is?
I'm sorry?
What if we zoned it what the high school is?
Institutional?
Institutional.
You
That's not even
could
close.
do that. I mean, it's institutional is very limited in what could happen there.
And if the school district's looking to expand and that he's up for sale, that makes a lot of sense for them to
Oh,
buy
right.
that.
Yeah, sure.
Guys, can you hear me? This is Kristen. Is that
Hello.
Brandywine, is the Brandywine Fabricators not a use that you want to see continue? Because that would be the only reason why you would change it, I would think. If you're not happy with that use on that property, but otherwise you're making it a non-conformity, which is sending them a message that you don't really like what they're doing there. Just something to think about. And I
True.
am concerned, I did express to both Nancy and Dawn that you're getting a lot of your industrial land, you're changing, and you have to have adequate opportunity for industrial development in the township. So, and I'm not suggesting that this absolutely has to stay industrial, but just, you got to keep that in mind and maybe pick up other parcels somewhere else. Because if you take away the Parkside property, if that's an option that you might be thinking about, then you're really going to be down to very little industrial land left.
Good point.
Kristen, does I1 and I2 count then? Like if we have enough
Yeah,
of both?
there's a lot of I too.
Yeah, let me see where I2 is. I didn't. Yeah.
I2, you only have those small
2 parcels.
parcels.
Yeah, you don't have a lot.
Over at
Mm-mm.
Marshallton Road and Gallagherville Road, two really tiny, right.
But there's a stretch between Bailey and just before the high school.
And as I said, we did pick up more I1
What now?
land. So the properties on North Town Road here and on Barley Sheaf, these were commercial C2. We have proposed to change those to I1. So you're picking up more I1 land here. If you rezone this, these pieces here next to the school, and possibly we'll discuss what would happen up here at Parkside, is it called?
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
there we go.
So you might end up with kind of like a wash. If you're picking up some industrial properties, but then if you rezone these others to something else, now you're back to where you started with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know that on Barley Sheaf Road I like the I1. Maybe I2 there. I'm not sure I love the idea of I1 there.
You were handicrafters?
Yeah.
But it's
I don't know.
Oh, excuse me, what if it is a mixed use growth tract of land? Because although it's industrial now, say that the owner wants to subdivide and to a developer or something that might want to build residential. Maybe he's not interested in maybe expanding his business, but then he has a lot of open space that he may want to subdivide.
So for the mixed use growth, that the minimum tract size for that type of
Acres.
development is usually 25 acres.
So
Yeah. I mean, there has to be some kind of scale there to make it work.
I was gonna ask for
Could be.
exceptions
could be R4,
Could be R4.
or for,
and that matches
these are
what's.
options for the future.
Right.
And even though it's not on Lincoln Highway, this is part of the whole drive for improving Lincoln Highway is the connection to Coatesville and
So, yeah, I mean, so looking at what adjoins it, R4 is an option. institutional is an option. But then, keeping in mind what Kristen Camp just said is rezoning it in that way, you'll be losing close to 20 acres or so of industrial zone land and making that a non-conforming use.
Here's our one.
Yes.
Mhm. How do you think, Mark?
Most of it's already industrial. You're like talking about what, 6 acres? Couple 1.5 acre parcel.
Yeah.
That gonna be, if it even gets.
I would have to agree with what Mark is saying because both Mark and Noel could probably do some research into this. The highest and best use for that land per dollar is going to be residential. So if they go to sell, they're going to be looking at, well, we can get it as is for a commercial property at X, or the development rights for that property is going to be far more. So I think keeping it industrial, knowing that the market is going to come out and say, okay, this is worth more as residential land than it is commercial or industrial land, is going to be, I think, the safety valve. Because the other problem is that, and Mark and Kristen can come back with something on this too, if all of a sudden we, upzone it to institutional, have we now unintentionally devalued the property because it can only go institutional use instead of what you can get on the fair market? So have we effectively taken that land?
That's a question.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. You can change,
Okay.
it's your discretion to zone it as you please. You're
Okay.
not, there's no taking by changing a zoning category. And I think that I think all of the options are viable options. I think R4 makes sense. I think institutional makes sense. I think keeping it industrial makes sense. So there's different pros and cons to each. And as I sit here and I actually just was texting Ray about it a little bit, I'm not really sure and I would want to talk to somebody like a developer who does industrial development. It's not that much land. So a true industrial development isn't going to come in on 14 acres. And I'm not sure that that's really the appropriate place. So I completely agree with you, Adam, that, if somebody was looking to redevelop it, I think an R4 type development is probably the most sought after. So if you guys could live with that, I think that that's a good option. And then we just have to keep in mind, is there other places that we would have available to be I zoned?
And not to mention access. I mean, access for true industrial is almost impossible for Brandywine to have here. Yeah, you can get a truck with that.
Got to go up, 11th?
Yeah, you got to go into the city and back through.
Some of those trucks.
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
I think
They
that was
should.
one of our concerns from the last meeting too.
Right.
R4 might be best option.
Down some road truck.
Yeah, because at some point, fabric company is gonna end. We don't know how long. So, 20 years from now, what would we really like to see in there?
All right. So R4, is that what you're?
Yeah, let me ask these guys too. Al, Tom, what are you guys thinking? Yeah, they don't have a mic, but go ahead. Oh, do you?
Um, it really is a toss up to me. R4 could stay at R1. It really kind of depends, what you're ultimately looking for. It is close to Coatesville, obviously.
Mhm.
But said right, the in and out of the place is tough. It's touchy. That's
Same lot, yeah, same lot. No opinion, yeah.
That's fine.
it looks like across the way in Coatesville. This is looking kind of industrial. Does anybody know what's,
So that's when you're coming down with Third. Yeah, includes
Oh, it's a football field, right?
football fields.
there's the railroad, the rail right of way here, so it borders the rail right of way and then across the right of way.
Yes, a field
You have what is the townhouses down there, Merchant.
before you come onto the underpass.
And then Eggleston is on the other side.
What?
Those newer townhomes down on a
Behind the
little
train
bit farther
station.
west into the city. But what is that? That's where he lived. That was his name.
Sorry for dragging
all
us
right,
all the
so
way.
let's
down.
keep going. Who's thinking what here? Let's try to get a.
To a razor.
Yeah, tough. Hey, Brett, you're on the computer there. What do you think? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could be transfer stations too,
It's
so.
not gonna happen. Again, on these properties, they're really too small for a use like that to
Mhm.
happen.
No, I know. What?
Yeah.
But. I don't.
It's feedback. That's what we need. Noel, your last one.
Yeah, I like the R4. But I agree, like the concern is with the road. And my concern also would be, if and when Brandywine Fabricators, I think that's the name, someday if they're not there, that's what I'm a little concerned on, what's all that gonna look like. So hope that offers some feedback there.
Love the birds. Thanks, Noel.
That's what
I
we're looking
ver-
into. We're looking into the future. We're not looking at the present. So if we're looking in
Right.
the future, then we have to think what does the future hold, and we're thinking development.
So Jane, you're saying R4.
Yes.
All right.
Part four.
Think about
R4.
what you want to see there, not what
Right.
the
What's there now.
Right.
vision for that,
Exactly.
those parcels.
I'm thinking R4. I like Adam's point though about, it being, you said about it being a better market if it's. But yeah, go ahead.
No, all I'm saying with that is keep it industrial because in the future, it will go high density residential. Once they, when he gets ready to retire, he'll get his multi-million-dollar chunk of land, as will the other ones.
Would he still get
Off
it
to Florida.
if it's R4?
So probably more in demand.
I'm gonna go R4.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on that. Can you shed a little more light on that, please?
What, from Adam?
What are you confused?
Yeah, from Adam.
What are we looking at here?
You said it'd be more marketable as an I1.
No, I think as we're looking at the zoning now, as Kristen had said, we need to keep a fair share of certain zones. So we keep it now as industrial because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But highest and best use study will come out and say that the best return for that land will be as residential. So when they go to sell,
Mhm.
the developer will come in and say, hey, I want to purchase this, but it will be incumbent upon turning the zoning to something that we can use, which would be the R4 zoning around it.
Mm-hmm. But if that doesn't happen and somebody wants to come in and put a marijuana shop
Actually.
That growing.
Yeah, a
or
growth
yeah,
facility.
growth or one of the other items that we don't want to, like, would be only my concern, that window of time.
Can they establish a marijuana growing facility within
Not
5 feet of the
Yeah.
school?
At the moment, they can, can't they?
5
I
feet.
would not think so.
That's way far,
Based on-
5 feet from the school.
Further
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
that.
okay.
And there's, I mean, the permits for growing facilities are so few and far between. I mean, they're giving a lot of dispensaries out, but they don't give a whole lot of groweries out. You're not gonna get a grow, you're not gonna get a grow. Yeah,
Or another manufacturing,
Yeah, you could,
firm that, you know,
Or a storage
fumes,
facility.
smells, odors, burning oil. I don't know, just.
Or
well, I think when those hypotheticals are thrown out, those would be noxious cases, which you would then have a, you know,
Have to
element
deal
sit
with
there and say, no, we can turn it down because of these impacts that are.
yeah, it has an extraordinary
Yeah.
impact on the community.
It's just coming down to if we get rid of these parcels, then what can't we use elsewhere right now that we want to see developed that way? So if we keep them the way they are, we have the potential in the future for them to change, hopefully to positive. But if we take this element of the industrial out, then suddenly Parkview may not be, you know, something we can change or something elsewhere. Because we're running up against that magic number
What, yeah,
of
whatever
how
that
much,
percentage
how
is.
much growth do we have potential for commercials or industrial.
Kristen Camp, just a question. Should somebody claim we don't have our fair share and somebody rules or a judge rules in favor of that, can they then come in any parcel and move there?
Sorry, I was having a hard time getting my mute. No, it has to be site specific. So it would be some that where that they, something that's not zoned industrial, that they would like to have be zoned because they have an industrial use, but they can't. They're claiming there's not a sufficient available land for industrial uses within the township. So it'd be site specific to the land that they are making that claim. That's exactly what happened in the Embryville matter. They claimed that there wasn't sufficient land in West Bradford for multifamily development. The land that they zoned, that they bought, was actually zoned into was either institutional or industrial. I think it was institutional. And so they claimed to the court, and they were successful in convincing the court that, hey, West Bradford doesn't have sufficient land zoned for multifamily. And so West Bradford ended up settling it because they didn't want to see 1,400 homes go there, and they're ending up purchasing land. So what would happen is if somebody had an industrial use that they wanted, say they owned a parcel or were equitable owner of a parcel in town, and they came in and claimed, well, you only have, and I'm going to make up a number here, you only have 50 acres of land across the entire township zoned industrial, that's not sufficient. And therefore it's a validity challenge to your ordinance. It's not so much fair share. It's really like saying you're not providing sufficient land area within your township for industrial uses. So, I mean, it's a risk, but at the same time, I don't think that the parcel we're talking about is really, I mean, other than what's there today, it's not really going to be conducive to support the true industrial uses that you're allowed, that your industrial, the list she just read off, Nancy read off. What you do have to worry about though, even if you zone it to R4, if a business similar to what Brandy Fabricators, you know, doesn't have to be the exact same name, but if it's a similar type of operation, they would be able to come in and continue it as a lawful non-conforming use anyway. So I don't want you to think that just by changing it to
Right.
R4,
Yeah.
if you know, Brandywine Fabricators family, you know, were to stop doing it, and a new business that does pretty much the same thing, you know, makes widgets in a similar fashion, we wouldn't be able to stop them even if you rezoned it to R4.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question, Josh, I hope.
It did, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I am in the what ifs. You know, a storage facility, no. There's all these things that I would like to, and I want to right that wrong, so.
Mark is saying R4.
Yeah.
I could go with R.
Gentlemen, four.
R4 it is.
R4.
Right, I'm leaning R4 also.
Okay. All right.
And I almost never disagree with E.F. Hutton
It's an option, that's all it is.
Yeah.
So just be aware
It's an
of the
option.
Yeah.
Options.
Yeah,
Should have
yeah.
options.
All right, so moving on, let's go counterclockwise on the map. Also from last month's meeting, the property at Marshallton Road, the property that is the site of the Geo Carlson business, we had decided to change that from I-1, Industrial 1, to R1, so that half of the property on the west side. So this 52.3 acre property, it's kind of horseshoe shaped. That's all one parcel. Currently, this piece that fronts on Marshallton Road is I-1. So the property is split zoned. And at last month's meeting, we decided to change that to R1. So now that property is all in one zoning district. So you do lose a few acres there of industrial land. But again, we had picked up a lot of industrial, or, you know, a larger amount of industrial land in the last round, a couple months ago. The property, again, another I-1 property. This one is sandwiched between the railroad right-of-way corridor. This one is still unresolved, possibly changing from I-1 to I-2 or Thorndale Village. Has there been any decision on that?
That's the storage unit, right?
Right.
I thought it was I2 currently.
True. That's true.
I think
still
it's currently, I-1.
I thought we made it I2 so
I2.
it's contiguous to.
It is, I know, but we talked.
Yeah, no, so it
Okay.
is, so that parcel is I-1. Currently, you have this
This,
narrow piece, which is actually the right of way that's or actually that's owned by PennDOT. It is I-1. Proposing to have these parcels, railroad right of way, be zoned as rail transportation corridor. So you'd have this storage unit parcel and these other little parcels here as I-1.
And the RTC was to maintain the ability for trails, right?
Right. So keep it as I-1.
I would be good with that.
that's fine.
All right. Okay. The Lloyd Farm is R2. We'll talk about that when we talk about the cluster option. And because that parcel would be impacted by whatever we decide to do with the cluster options.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Keep that on hold.
Something. 2 minutes.
The I-1 properties up here at Parkview, currently unresolved. There is this R4 piece or neighborhood.
I'm glad.
So the one point to make is that if the township, R4 is the district that allows townhomes. So if the township is amenable to townhomes in that area, you could consider changing that area or part of that area anyway to R4. Again, we're back to the issue of losing I-1 land in order to gain R4 land.
My biggest concern over there is the flooding.
And we don't have to answer that one now. Want to kind of wait to see what happens there.
Yeah, what is back there now? Just. open
Remember when
land,
we were-
trees? I never.
When we're looking out over it, there's like it goes into a valley. It's a lot of open land, but
Mhm.
it's,
I think the 13.8, is that our land? The one that says 13.8?
I believe that is, yeah. So here's a zoom in of
Yeah.
that.
This one right here. Yeah.
Yeah, that, I think that's ours.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's township owned land. And it's looking like woodlands,
It's all wetland.
wetland.
What?
Oh.
17.9 is woodland right now.
No, it's an open field.
It is an open field.
Like
I
open
like I
field.
just,
Who owns that now?
Parks, somewhere. Yeah, it's under a corporation.
Yeah. 150 Parkside Drive.
Yep.
Out of Palm Beach, Florida.
That was the mobile home community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they weirdly own where it says 17.9 and then directly like diagonally, they own that little piece. So,
This-
yeah.
Hmm.
This is one parcel.
Yep.
So, I mean, so that can remain I-1 for now if you want to. You don't need to do anything on that now.
Freeland.
Right.
To get to that property, you have access from, what is it, 282?
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
but also the entrance to the park side, you could access, which I don't like.
Yeah.
Because if you do industrial there, you'd want to come off at 282
But you would have to come off to 282 onto Parkside
to enter that.
to enter that because Parkside comes up at a point and 282 goes like this. So you have to enter off Parkside Drive there.
Yeah.
All right. So
That's
Yes.
homes.
Home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're very densely,
I was gonna say, they look very tight.
and that they all took on significant amounts of water in
oh, horrible,
I don't-
horrible. They lost
their
everything.
whole first floor.
okay. So let's move on. So that will remain industrial for now. And then we'll talk about this in a little more detail coming up. The area at Route 30 bypass, Fisherville Road and Reeseville Road, where the Brandywine Hospital is, and the farm property. And the school district property here, and there are a couple of parcels that are owned by utility companies. So this area is currently zoned C2. And we had talked about rezoning school district property and these two utility properties to institutional. Your institutional district permits those two types of uses. And then rezoning the hospital, you have the Wawa and CVS here, right?
Yes.
And then the farm property, the farmhouse is here, and then this is the open farm field. Changing these to a mixed use growth district where you could have a mix of high density residential like townhomes, and this is what was the
Weatherstone.
Weatherstone example, and then with a dedicated commercial area as well that could have commercial and offices and so forth. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's how the map would look at this point if we go through with this. And at the last meeting, we had decided to include the hospital property in this district so that it could broaden the opportunity for that type of development. Okay, so
Oh,
that is,
Can I ask one question?
Yep.
Where the hospital is, you do have the medical office buildings still in use. So with this mixed use, we would still be able to offer that?
we could offer that. So we'll look at that. And that's a question that I have for all of you is we'll look at the uses that the mixed use growth would allow. And then a question for you is, do you want to allow other types of uses in addition? So let's put that on hold for a second. Jump to the cluster agenda item, and then we'll come back to that mixed use growth area. Sound good? Okay. Okay, so this is just to recap for the zoning map where this stands. So we're going to keep these parcels on the west side next to the Coatesville High School or we're gonna change that to R4. The parcel at Marshallton Road is going to R1. The parcel here on the east side of the township in the railroad right-of-way area is going to stay I1. Lloyd Farm stays as is for now. The Parkview area stays I1, and we'll talk more about this mixed use growth area. All right. Okay. Okay, so let me scroll down here to this issue of the cluster standards. So this came up when we were talking about the properties that remain, the larger properties that remain in the township. We call them undeveloped, but some of them do have some development on them now, but they're just your larger properties that are greater than 25 acres where there is further development potential should the landowners decide to develop. So cluster is permitted as an option in your zoning district as a conditional use in your R1, R2, R3, and R4 districts. The properties that would be, let me flip back to the map here. The properties that remain that would qualify for cluster are the third 1.7 acre property that is adjacent to the Coatesville VA. And we had looked at these properties a couple of months back with the natural constraints. And so they do have some slopes and floodplains and whatnot that would limit the development potential. You have the Lloyd Farm. So both of these properties, the 31.7 acre next to the VA and the Lloyd Farm are greater than 25 acres, and they're in the R2 district. The other two properties where cluster would be a viable option are down in the southern, southeastern part of the township. You have the 52.3 acre property where the Geo Carlson business is. And then to the east of that, we have a 25.8 acre property, which is, these are both R1, and they both have uses on them now. I believe the 25.8 acre property is a residential use. So at issue here are two properties in the R2 district, two properties in the R1 district. So when we had looked at these properties with the environmental constraints overlaid on this map, we were able to see again that they do have some constraints, and so development would be somewhat limited by those natural features on the site as it is. But just to make sure we cover the bases, I wanted to look at, because these are eligible for cluster, what would happen if, how does cluster actually apply here? So flip back here. So I did a pretty extensive look at your analysis of your cluster regulations for all of the districts, and then just focusing in on the R1 and R2 districts, because these are the properties that are affected. The cluster ordinance requires public sewer and public water. These properties are just outside of your sewer service area, except for the Geo Carlson, the one with the Geo Carlson business. That one is in the sewer service area, but the others are right next door to it. So I think that sewer and water could be a possibility on those properties. So in the R1 district, your base zoning district, without doing a cluster option for public sewer and public water, the minimum net lot area is 25,000 square feet. That equates to 1.74 dwelling units per net acre density. We compare that to your cluster option. If a developer, so your cluster option is basically trying to incentivize a developer to choose cluster and give you 50% open space. And the incentive is in giving them a higher density for doing the cluster development. So you're saying to the developer, we'll give you more houses if you give us 50% open space. So in the R1 district, a developer could get up to 2 dwelling units per gross acre. So it's gross acre versus net acre here. But if they do certain things, they could get up to 2 dwelling units per gross acre, and that compares to 1.7 dwelling units per net acre. So they probably get a bit of a density bonus there. Now the issue is with the R2 district. So this would be the Lloyd Farm property and the property next to the Coatesville VA. The base zoning, without doing cluster, with public sewer and public water, has a minimum net lot area of 15,000 square feet, which equates to 2.9 dwelling units per net acre. The cluster, the developer could get, if they meet certain conditions, they could get up to 2.25 dwelling units per gross acre. So 2.25 compared to 2.9 is not much of an incentive for the developer to do cluster and give you 50% open space. So the simple fix here is to increase that density for the cluster to give that developer an incentive. And I honestly, so I wrote here in red, you could increase the density. The base cluster density could be 2.9, and then if they meet certain conditions, they could get up to 3.4. And I think most developers would do those conditions to get the 3.4. So in that way, you would actually now be giving the developer an incentive to do the cluster and give you 50% open space on those properties.
Isn't it kind of counterintuitive though? Like you're R2 for a reason, right? You want less dense, but then you give them density to make it more dense. So like, you know what I mean?
Getting 50% of that 30 acres reserved.
Right.
I get that, but
Yeah.
but you're basically making it an R3 or R4 in order to get 50% open space.
Yeah, and so that's the question. Is it?
What's the open space?
Anymore.
That's the
Yeah.
question right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm just asking because when you
Other bonuses or benefits of cluster, you know, shorter roads and less impervious coverage and so on. But that's a question this group has. Is the open space an important benefit?
I guess it depends on the type of open space, because I know sometimes the cluster will take advantage of all the good land and the open space ends up to be unusable or
So your ordinance is
Wetlands.
written so that only a certain percentage of the open space can include the unusable land.
okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not ideal to increase the density, but if you look at it this way, as it is now, the developer would get 2.9 dwelling units per net acre, and there's 0 open space. Here, we're just basically saying, we'll give you the 2.9 for cluster and up to 3.4. And we'll get the open space. So you're either going to get that about the same density without open space and about the same, maybe a little bit more with open space. Now it would kind of throw your cluster out of whack. I mean, so here, if we increase that in the R2 to 2.9 as the base cluster density, then they can get 0.5 more. This is how it's structured now. It's actually higher than what your R3 and R4 provide. So it's kind of like we're kind of working, no offense, but we're working with a cluster ordinance that's
Cluster.
yeah.
trying to tweak it a little bit,
Make it not
make it a
look
little more
still
workable
condensed.
on these properties.
All just in the wording.
Yeah.
The same effect.
It's
And
the
so,
question of
yeah.
whether or not you want open space that's passive and real natural, or do you just want lawns? Which are not.
Right.
I mean, it gives you the opportunity to preserve woodlands, but it's a conditional use process. You work with them, say, this is what we would like to see continue in open space. Have requirements that there are trails within the open space. I mean, there's lots of things that you benefit the township. But it is that basic question. You're still getting more development, parcel benefit the township after the fact. And hey, look, somebody could come in and do a great development if 40% open space, but that's crossing your fingers, hoping that you get that open.
But nothing requires them to pick one.
Correct.
Oh. That one for it. That just. Here's you.
Can they use the open space as part of their stormwater management?
I believe they can use part of it. Your ordinance is written that. I have to look, double check, but I think that they can.
So like, oh, what I'm weighing here is, so open space, but it's stormwater management. Part of it can be junk land that we can't use. Like how much of open space are we actually getting versus like, a
Josh,
true-
that's an easy fix though. I mean, that's an
I was
easy
just gonna
change
say,
to the,
that's-
yeah, that's an easy fix.
You are working on the zoning. So
Right.
you actually can revise that language. Again, meet needs and make sure. Benefit.
I just don't want to see where we allow this and then it's all junk land and nobody can use it.
Sure.
Because really, we're talking about, theoretically, we're talking about one property. The other one is steep slopes, and by the time, there's no way they could make that. If we change that, it's got to be usable land. There's no way that 31 acres really is going to be part of a cluster. So really, you're just talking about Lloyd Farm.
And that has steep slopes. Big chunk of it right here. Mhm.
Oh. Oh, but. Okay.
Wasn't the development that was proposed, wasn't that more of a cluster?
I don't
Oh, it
believe
was
so.
a cluster road.
Yeah.
It was the entire property.
Entire, every,
High density.
Yeah.
yeah, it was everything, every inch.
Except for obviously what they can't develop and then stormwater.
And they were putting the stormwater along Lloyd, which was going to create mosquito hell for the people who live on Lloyd. As long as there's things up in the air about that part, at least part of that property, I wouldn't want to make a decision.
So what would we need to change? Can it realistically be done if we change that they can't use junk land and they can't use the stormwater as part of the open space?
You
Yeah,
just
now-
change the standards for in your cluster, what accounts as open space. And I don't think it's 100% of it can be the junk land. I think there are limitations.
Yeah,
There's a
there
lot
are
of- yeah.
limitations. Are-
Yep.
I'm saying take that out completely. And it has
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
true
you could
open
do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's,
now there are some ordinances, and I've written some of them where the open space, well, so it is, the open space is 50% of the net tract area.
Hmm.
And then the open space has to include the so-called junk land, the natural resources. But then on top of that, you're getting 50% of what's left. Now, so that would accomplish, I think, and the reason for that is you want as much of that, of those natural resources to be in the protected open space. So it's actually kind of counterintuitive to what you're thinking. A lot of places, they don't want that land in the open space, can't use it. Well, here you're getting that land in the open space, protected, and then you're also getting,
So in other words, you're
Usable
you're
open
netting out the
space.
constraint.
Okay.
When you can do a density calculation.
Okay.
You're saying these
Right.
don't count.
right?
The floodplain, the wetlands, the very steep slopes, that's all taken out of the equation. And you're doing that calculation on density. So you have 100 acres and 25 acres are all constrained. That's 75 acres that you're doing against.
Okay.
Right.
I wasn't
You're
clear
still
on
getting the
that.
50%.
You're right.
but
it's
remember, you don't
50%
want to
plus.
make it, you don't want to
Right.
make it so prohibitive or so pulling so much out that then they just say, screw it, I'll just do the base density, which is not necessarily what
Yeah.
you want.
That's true.
There's a balancing act there.
Yeah, there definitely is. And
Especially if you have a parcel. I mean, if you're not worried about properties being developed, but if you have parcels that wouldn't be able to be developed because of that.
Right.
They're gonna stay the way they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, lost my thought. No, that's okay. It's
I
not
wish
you.
I had caught it.
It's not you, Ray. Trust me. Oh, so, and then, yes, that's what I was gonna say, is that also forces you to have smaller minimum lot sizes. So you have your density, so the developer can get X number of units, but now they're on only 50% of the net area. So now those lot sizes have to be small, pretty darn small to fit those homes on 50% of the net. So,
Because here you have it going from 8,000 to 6,000.
right. Yeah. So even to increase the density here, as it's shown on the chart, I think you'd have to go down to about a 6,000 square foot lot in order to be able to fit those homes on the lot with 50% open space.
6 6 feet.
In some municipalities, they say no minimum lot area to give the developer the flexibility to be able to fit the homes in, knowing that the developer is going to build the biggest lots that they can build. They're already limited by the number of homes they can build. So it's not like if they make smaller lots, they get more homes. It's get 50 homes, now fit them on here. And so they're going to make those lots as big as they can and still fit site. But I don't know that you want to go there. So again, the easiest way to incentivize this is to bump up the density in the cluster so that it does give the developer some incentive to give you the 50% open space, you know, but, and then as I have here on this last line of this chart, possible revision, increase the density. And then the question, is the trade-off worth it? Increasing the density by 0.5 in order to get 50% common open space. So there is a trade-off.
Let's just theoretically say 61 acres of Lloyd Farm. Maybe 10 acres of that is probably not developable. So now you're down to 51 acres. So you're saying at that point, then they essentially have 25 and a half acres to develop, and 25 and a half acres have to remain open space.
So the way your cluster is written, so the cluster density is per gross acre. So that density is calculated per gross acre. So let's say Lloyd Farm is 60 acres. And let's say the density is 3 dwelling units per acre. They would get 180 homes. Now, 50% of that gross tract size, 30 acres, would be open space. So they can put those homes on the other 30. So you're going to have some pretty, you know, you have to fit all of those homes. 30 acres. Yeah.
But do they end up being townhomes? Are we
They would
still
have to
talking
be
about
single family?
homes?
Is that gonna get
Single family in R2.
You'd be looking more like a 55 plus community. Be looking at maybe some townhomes or quads where you have 4 together.
Mhm.
That's not allowed in R2.
No.
Not in R2. It's true. Townhomes aren't either singles,
There'll be small holders. Yeah.
but that's where we're going.
Wait a
15, 20 years from now, it's gonna be small homes. I mean, we're already seeing it with apartments. The number of people that need your housing study points is now growing. The 1 to 4 family, homes, we've now reached almost parity with people that are looking for 1-bedroom apartments because the size of family, you either have families or you don't. Either single people.
living longer,
Yeah.
senior residents.
So, what we're looking at now, what we want, but people 15 years from now, 20 years from now, this is, starting to be developed, isn't going to be what is in demand now. The Toll Brothers idea, that's slowly fading into the sunset because land is expensive. And once you've raised children, you don't need the 4-bedroom, 4.5 bath, 4,200 square foot home. You have to take that into account.
I was talking to Don earlier today in Fraser, the apartments and all, but going towards Exton, that labor training area.
Mhm.
I see a sign there that says they are low 1 millions. They're building something. I don't know if it's townhomes or they're single homes or but low 1 millions.
Starting at
And-
1 million, the sign says. It's unbelievable. They're singles
But,
and
but
they,
what are they?
they're single families
Single family?
and they, single family facing the 30 bypass in what was an industrial area. It's unbelievable.
Oh,
Very small.
Well,
Oh, really?
yeah. What are the ones out
Somewhere
there
for
on,
me and
is it Clover? Back there behind the, that whole industrial area?
Yeah.
Those are another set where it's like, who would buy here? But
Yeah.
they're selling.
Well, but there are good examples. We did a cluster design guide years ago, and
Mhm.
there are good examples of single families on small lots.
Mhm.
They're not what you're picturing, they're not the giant homes on an acre, quarter acre, whatever, but they're designed in such a way that they really work. A place called Deerfield Knoll, out and try, I think, different. I can't remember which township it's in, but I can send you guys some examples that are actually really nice developments because of the design, because of the
Okay.
preservation of trees and so on and so forth, all that in. So it can work. It can be successful, but yeah, obviously there's also those that don't look as nice as you might want them to.
Mhm.
But again, all things that to consider with the ideas.
Yeah, so you would be looking at smaller lot sizes in the area of maybe 6,000 square feet or smaller to fit that. So,
So would they build up? Are we talking 3-story, 4-story homes?
no, it would still be, I mean, they would still be limited by your, whatever the height regulation is in the R2 district.
Mm-hmm.
So, by 35 feet. So they're just,
35 feet.
yeah, 2-story homes on small lots.
Mark, I
So-
think it would be helpful. Let me just interject real quick. Mark, I think it would be helpful for you to, if you could share the name of that development you're talking about. And we
Sure.
can try to figure out what district, what township and then what the zoning regulations are that hopefully guided towards that development. That might be a good place for these guys to look at.
Sure.
Deerfield Knoll, right?
Deerfield. There are other examples. That's the only way I can think of.
Yeah.
It's actually my favorite of that genre in the township.
Well, that's the one we want to see is your favorite.
And again, keep in mind that even if you, I mean, you also have an option here is to just leave your cluster as is, leave things alone, and then you would be looking at your base zoning density for the R2 is 15,000 square foot minimum lot areas.
Willistown.
It is Willistown, yeah.
And, the areas of the development that cannot be developed would in effect be open space, but they're just not common open space. They might be part of somebody's yard.
One of the things that really had bothered, I mean, a million things that really bothered me about the proposed development there before was that the trails would only be accessible to, it was an HOA of over 55, and the trails that only accessible to residents, and like, they don't want anything like that. Yeah.
Well, so that is, so So let me stop here for a second. So your cluster ordinance, I believe that it gives, there are potential for different forms of ownership of the open space.
Mhm.
So typically they're under ownership of the HOA,
Mhm.
but, and I'd have to double check this again in your ordinance, but other ownership options are usually they can dedicate that open space to the township. And if the township chooses to accept it, they can take dedication of it for public access. Or it can go to like a land conservation organization. But typically I will say that they're homeowner association owned and only available for use by those. But I believe in your ordinance, there are those different ownership options.
Also write in lots of requirements.
Yeah.
Write in that it tie into whatever,
Mhm.
you know, a larger trail system might be within a certain distance. So there are things. It's not always going to work.
Yeah.
You're not always going to get exactly what township officials, but you can, you know, push it as far as you can in terms of, again, get what you want.
All right.
Those birds again,
Well, you chiming in?
the longest day of the year.
Is Noel wanting to say something?
No, I was saying,
Oh, all right, all right. All right.
You'll hear my dogs, and actually I need to jump off. But as always, a great meeting and look forward to the next one and looking at the minutes, you know, closer to that time. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks. You.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, so do you want to mull over this cluster for a month?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda. So the mixed use growth district. Possible proposed mixed use growth district. So let me just flip back to the map again. And so again, this is the pink area at Route 30, Fisherville Road, Reeseville Road, includes the hospital and the CVS, Wawa, and the farm. So I had shown you images from the Weatherstone development,
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
which, yeah, it's a beautiful development. So there's a commercial component to it, and there's also residential. Now, Weatherstone, there's townhomes and single families. Here in the mixed use growth district, we went through this last month. I just want to go back through and hit some highlights and some questions for you in terms of how you would want to structure this. So for uses by right, we have mixed use village, which is what Weatherstone is.
Yes.
So there's a question here. This could be a by right use, or it could be a conditional use within this district. It depends on how much oversight the board wants in deciding on this type of development. Other uses would be general agriculture, public utilities, municipal uses, conservation use, and forestry. And these are basically coming right out of your institutional district now. I kind of just borrowed from that district as a starter.
I'm not here.
Uses by conditional use. So put mixed use village here again, because your decision, you can either make it a by right use or have it as a conditional use. And then educational uses, hospitals and medical centers. And then the question is, do you want any other uses to be permitted here, either by right or conditional? And let me just explain how this is set up. So let me scroll. So mixed use village is like a mix of uses in and of itself. So that would permit, the way we have it written here, is townhomes, retail uses, businesses and offices. And actually, let me just scroll down here because they're listed here. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. So down on page 6 of your packet, within a mixed use village, these are the uses that would be permitted. So there would be the residential area. Everybody there with me under A?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You have your residential area where you could have townhomes. Category 1 home occupation, which is basically a no impact home-based business. And then uses and structures accessory to residential uses. And then in the village commercial area, so part of the tract, a certain percentage of the tract, anywhere from 5 to 15% of the development tract, would be a commercial area. And within that area, all of these uses would be permitted: retail business establishments, business and professional offices, medical and dental clinics, restaurants, personal service establishment, bank and financial establishments. And they have this size limitation here. Within the village commercial area, there could also be educational uses, church or religious use, municipal and governmental uses, child daycare center, dwelling units on the 2nd and 3rd story of commercial uses. Category 1 home occupations to go along with those dwelling units, and then active recreational use. So within the commercial part of the village, you could have all of these commercial uses. The question is, do you want to allow other commercial types of uses or institutional types of uses in the mixed use growth district, that pink area, that are not necessarily part of this village? They could be standalone uses. So an applicant could come in with a proposal to do a mixed use village, or they could come in for a proposal to do a gigantic college campus or something, or another big hospital on the whole tract. So
Ask that again.
do you want, and let me scroll back. up here. So the way this is written now, an applicant can come in with a proposal to do a mixed-use village. And that mixed-use village would contain all of those uses, the residential and all of those commercial and other uses we looked at. So you might get a mixed-use village on that pink area. Or an applicant could come in and propose an educational use or a hospital, medical centers on that tract or one of those tracts, and you're not going to get your mixed use village on that tract. So they could come in with either or.
Are you asking us if we want to allow either or are
We
you
wanted to-
asking us, or are you telling us that?
Yeah, do you want to, yes, I'm asking you, do you want to allow either or?
How
I
was
think-
Weatherstone worded?
Weatherstone.
Cause I didn't
Second.
bring those pages and
No.
I apologize. No, do I have them? Maybe I have them.
Weatherstone is, I believe Weatherstone is written. And much of this is
Yeah.
based on Weatherstone.
Yeah.
As
Right purpose, right density of housing. Sorry. Go ahead.
I believe Weatherstone is written so that that's the only thing that could be done on that property. But that's limited. Because if no developer wants to do a mixed use village,
And wasn't
That's-
that land, let me interject one thing, wasn't that land vacant? Where now what the land we have that we're talking about and I'm sorry, I'm not familiar enough, is the land in town vacant that we're talking about to be this district, or are there existing medical buildings there that they'd have the right to continue?
Part of it's vacant, part of it's the hospital. But Kristen, am I wrong in that if the hospital has discontinued the use for a year, that they wouldn't get that, right? If the zoning has changed?
Yes, you're wrong on that.
Okay.
There's a presumption of abandonment, but if they continue to market it and don't evidence an intent to abandon the right to have a hospital or medical use, then they get to have that continuation of a lawful nonconformity. It's very hard to prove intent to abandon. So I think that, yeah, I think Nancy's question is, would you like to guide it, assuming that they're not going to continue to market it because they can't find anybody that wants it, which seems to be the problem, to do it as a hospital or medical offices. Do you want to guide them to only do this mixed use type development and not give them the opportunity to continue having these standalone buildings or have new standalone buildings?
right. And this would apply, again, so here's what we're looking at. The aerial photo is up, the hospital is this piece. And then you have your Wawa and CVS. Farmhouse here along Fisherville Road, and then the open, basically vacant farm property here. All of this is under the 33.7, 8.7, and 5 acres are under one ownership. And then the hospital owns this property that has the farmhouse on it and the hospital property. So.
And there's a couple of standalone
Yeah.
buildings there. There was the Spackman Nursing School that is now closed and it's vacant, but there's a couple of other buildings where there are medical groups in there.
So that would be the mixed use growth area. So, so you have several parcels here. And yeah, so my question is, if this whole area were to allow only mixed use village, it could be rather limiting.
Also, it's not owned by the same person. So how is that? Like,
Right,
you would have two mixed use villages on either side of each other.
right. So, look back here. Oops, sorry. So here, let's go down to the conditional use. So the way it's written now, mixed use village would be one use option, but somebody could come in and say, we want to do an educational use. And maybe somebody wants to do turn the hospital into an educational use or another medical type of facility, or convert it into some other commercial use,
Like a warehouse.
Big shop.
or whatever
World's
usage
largest
you
vape
would
shop.
want
Yeah,
here.
Do
So,
not want a warehouse or a vape shop.
We,
well, so we could write in here the uses that you
Permitted, yeah.
would like to see here.
and can we separate those two? I mean, the vacant lot, just mixed use we were discussing, but where the hospital is now, do the mixed use and a hospital educational options. So that way any larger hospital or educational facility would only lean towards where the Brandywine Hospital presently.
So I'm sorry, Paul, you're saying separate it.
The 53 out.
The vacant farmland, make that the limiting mixed use growth. The hospital side, make that the one you can do either. Mixed use growth, both village and commercial.
Just throwing it out there, but
You got about close to 50 acres, not hospital. I think we were talking about that before, that could be, it would make for a smaller version of Weatherstone, but,
Mhm.
I just don't see two of the same thing working on you, because we already struggled to get commercial on in highway. Now you're talking about trying to fill two commercial villages right across the street from each other.
So in this way, it gives it's more options for all of those properties up there. And you can add other uses. So you could look at C2 district. See, okay, we wouldn't mind seeing some of these uses up here. In addition to mixed use village. Hospital. I just started with educational and
town, so-
hospital as examples.
but mixed use. Road, mug.
I would say though that I would not be in favor of by right those things.
And
Weatherstone was done through conditional use, and I actually did a right to know request to get a copy of the decision, and I haven't received it yet. So I will share that with you when I get it, but I tend to agree with Josh on the magnitude of this kind of development.
I agree as well. I just want to put it out there.
I'd even go special exception.
Well, special exception would put it in the zoning hearing board.
Yeah.
Ah.
So how would you do that then? You would, so what is that? How many acres is the farmland?
The 50, all of that, right?
This is the farmland.
Fine.
So, yay, like around 45 acres.
So how would you write that if you want to let the hospital side become just a hospital and the other side become a mixed village? Can you say you have to have 50 plus acres to do the either or?
Think about that. I mean, you could do that. But I mean, I don't know that you're going to limit this to just hospitals.
No, I'm saying like if you wanted to do some proposal, like let's say you wanted to build a university there, but you could only do that on the 53 acres, not on the 40 acres on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
40 acres on the other side would have to be the mixed use village. Or do you create two zones?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. The other option is would be, I mean, we could do the mixed use village as an overlay. That would work. I got to think through it, see if that would work. But you want mixed use village as a possibility on either side.
I think like in my twisted mind, I would like to keep the door open for a hospital
Mm-hmm.
or a, like Cooper Hospital, has an entire teaching school. But should we get closer to the point where it comes clear that's not going to happen, that someone would have the option of buying the whole thing and make a math, from the 8.7 through the 53 and making it a big mixed use, a big mug.
I mean, look, the Weatherstone development is 300 acres.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not unheard, but
Yeah.
Again, this is under different ownership, but that's a possibility. I mean, it does allow for it under different ownership as long as it's by plan.
Market's gonna pay.
Right.
Yeah.
Possibility.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's what Penn was looking at, was essentially moving the VA to the 33 acres, and continuing the hospital with, albeit not a admitting hospital, but
Is it a psych hospital?
it was some of that. It was VA patients. It was
Outpatient ER.
Yeah, and an ER. So
I mean, that's where I lean toward. Again, I think that if you only offer mixed use village as a use here, it would be extremely limiting.
Yeah.
I
I like,
A room for growth.
I like the idea of limiting to a degree. A very important.
And I don't know that if you could get challenged on it, that you're really only allowing one type of use on this.
I would say wait to see what Kristen comes back with that decision
Yes.
out of Weatherstone. See, let's take a deeper dive into Weatherstone. How they codified it and see what we come up with.
This ordinance here that I have written is largely based on, the language that Weatherstone is based
Mhm.
on. And it's modified for this area here in town. Only question is, are the uses and how to structure that. So, I'll look back at Weatherstone. I think Weatherstone was done. I'll just have to look back to see how it was done. As I think it might have been an overlay. The existing property was a farm. And I'm not sure that they offered other uses, additions, mixed use village, but I'll see if I can find it out.
So, in the, what you had pulled together here, where you had some questions, I think. Yeah, you had, at least 20% on page 9, at least 20% of the required common open space shall be in some form accessible to residents. I would have hoped to pump that up a little bit. On page 10, garage rear loading made more sense. And on page 11, go the 45 feet so that you could have 14-foot first floor ceilings and then 10 or more on the second and third floor. That's just, oh, and then on page 12, at the bottom of B, number 6, I go to 20 miles per hour.
For the Well,
B6.
okay.
You have 25 miles per hour. I'd recommend.
Can you actually do that? I thought that was regulated by state.
Yeah.
Way. Yeah.
Oh, the HOA could,
Yeah.
That's why you
We're
get
at
16
17.
miles. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
and I agree with Mark on the 45 feet. I know we talked about this before, but
Mhm.
that tract of land across from Brandywine Hospital, the perfect spot to go higher.
Yeah.
Circle that too.
What,
In square.
highlighted? Bear with me while I scroll back through. Oh, sorry.
I as of right now have to have resident. Why would heck state this is action qualifies me now.
That should be shall.
Right.
Should be
Yeah, and that's
shall.
why I flagged that. That's why that's highlighted. On the one hand, yes, you're correct. And if we change that to shall, it's saying that shall have a residential area and a commercial area. Some there's the feeling though that if you say that you shall have a commercial area, if the market isn't there for the commercial area, then you're not going to get your commercial area. And so then the whole development goes away. So that's the reason that the may is in there. In case a developer says, there's no market for commercial here. I don't know that that would be the case though, at this location.
Yeah, right by the bypass.
Couldn't they petitions change the zoning then?
Yeah.
You know, if
So-
it's in there as shall,
Yeah,
then if they can't make it work, they could come back to the board at that time and. change it.
Right, yeah.
So what's the definition of mixed use? Is it commercial and residential, or is it residential and open space?
It is commercial and residential.
Okay.
And the residential on top of the commercial. So, I mean, I'm okay with changing that to shall. So.
And then Nancy, when you hit a minute, I have a question for you.
Mhm. Alrighty.
So this is a situation that popped up Tuesday night in the planning commission meeting, where we have the Habitat coming in. They're looking at presenting for the property that we're talking about over next to Brandywine. They have currently presented two structures, which would actually, in one case, either be apartments with heat units, or it could end up being two blocks of like 2 or 3 unit townhouses. One of the things that we're looking at the zoning is that to do townhomes, you're supposed to have 25 acres. The way we're going in the county or in the township with the amount of limited land, looking at density, because we do need affordable housing and other options, is to maybe visit what we're required to have for townhomes and maybe make that less restrictive so that you can actually get habitat for project without going through a massive change, but also looking at other developable pieces of property that are smaller that we would be able to get used into a point of having a higher return for developers, because now we can, you know, a string of townhomes, 3 townhomes or 2 sets of twins, or, you know, another option in the R4, since that's our largest, most dense zoning district, which technically I think this property does currently fall. It's the R4 there. A street from boundaries. So that's a discussion maybe we talk about next month, but put that on the agenda.
Okay, let me make sure it's 8:27. Let me just do a quick run through here.
So now that Mark's back, we've all decided we're going to turn Boyd Avenue to industrial.
industrial with 80-foot minimum building height.
It's the new trash recycling.
Yeah.
Solid waste, yeah. No, there'll be Christmas decorations. You'll be fine.
Holiday.
Hol-
Holiday decoration.
Could rely. Essentially different. In all our part. Taking part in our.
Interesting.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in these ordinances.
Strongly suggest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a good thinking.
Well, although it does depend though on who owns this. Again, you're going to have for the open space ownership options. And I don't know that you could require public facilities.
You treat it as an incentive if you do this, kind of like you did with the dog park. If you put in those two facilities with dog, wash and bathe, then we'll give you an extra percentage point.
Mhm.
Because depending on who's moving in, if they have those facilities there, that's grooming, dog washing, that's, how many people take that serious?
Yeah, I don't know that you can require. I don't think that you can require public facilities
Kristen?
in the. Yeah. He's boarding a plane.
Yeah, peace out.
He's boarding a plane right now. I mean,
Wow.
citizens too. I don't think that you can
I've never seen it.
require that. I've never seen it. Good question
Doesn't mean
though.
Just
Good
add
question.
a trail over to the Wawa. You'll be fine.
A trail to any.
Talks about having like. Already. That. Or that.
I think that would be in here.
That is usually in the subdivision and development
Salda,
ordinance. Yeah.
but that could go into Salda.
You don't want to keep that. So. Same reason you don't want
Bike
to.
paths and bike and pedestrian.
Okay.
Um,
How many miles a day do you run, Brett?
Consecutively? And is Adam chasing you?
I would almost say if the public restrooms become something you can enforce, you'd want that in Saldo as well.
Mhm.
Because that's, I mean, there's a lot to figure out there. They have
Yeah.
to be a
Right.
9 yards. So
right. That's
I'm
true.
not saying it's not a bad idea, but I think you'd almost want it Saldo and make sure it gets built properly.
Right. Okay. Mark, you had, what page? You said the 20% open space.
Page 9C, common open space number 3. You had at least
Oh,
20%,
Gotcha. Yeah,
and I was hoping that could be bumped up a little.
that's.
What? At least 20%, but no more than 50%?
And then, Mark, they have your favorite golf courses in that same comment. Facilities such as playing fields, golf courses, tennis courts.
Mhm.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I mean, on the size of the track we're looking at here.
Yeah, not gonna have any.
You're gonna get the golf course though.
No. It looks good.
You have a tennis court, but only half of a tennis court. Kind of like
Tennis
ball. Yeah, like wall ball with. Yeah.
So, okay, any other questions, comments on the mixed use growth? Okay. All right, so the big open question here on this one is the uses and how to structure this district as far as the uses go, what uses we want to permit there and how we want to permit them to happen. So I'll do a little more digging on how that could be structured,
Mm-hmm.
if it can be, how to make this so that mixed use village. Well, again, I don't know that you want to limit it to just mixed use village on the farm property. So I think we might be in a situation where you allow other uses across the whole area. But I'll ask Kristen about that to see what she says.
And you completely sold me on the mug at the last meeting. Oh, this is like demo love. I can't let go of it.
Yeah, now it's like trying
Yeah,
to get
it's,
the nitty gritty.
yeah.
Yeah, what it
No.
looks like.
Okay, well, I think that does it for tonight. Any other comments? Is there any public comment from the audience or the Zoom audience?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. All right, next meeting again is June or
July.
July
18.
18th.
Excellent. Another great meeting.
All right, thanks
Thank you,
everybody.
Nancy. Thank you, everyone.
Cool.
Yes.